What can we do? We can jump. The new normal is the state of being unraveled, and unfortunately, we are getting used to it. They are boiling the frog, and every time the temperature gets just a little too hot and they suspect the frog will jump out, or the frog does jump out and they put it back in, they turn the temperature down a little to lull the frog once again. We need to jump even if we don't feel the temperature going up. Jump outside the narrative whenever possible. When I say jump outside the narrative, what I mean is don't do the expected. Don't just accept the other side of the argument either. Don't argue. That would be unexpected. Don't just defend your team. Don't just go along with the crowd. We're not playing identity politics. That's what's expected. I mean, what we talked about last time, turning off the media, especially social media, certainly is unexpected. I mean, yeah, we talked about that last time, but it isn't just about peace of mind, as I mentioned. It's about jumping out of the pot. I kind of get the fear of missing out, but what are you missing out on if you instead go on a hike, go to the beach, go out to dinner with friends? What are you missing out on if you don't watch the awards shows? I mean, they're just applauding themselves in their own industry, and just like our political elections, doesn't it all seem a little bit rigged too? What are you missing out on if you pick up a paintbrush and put it to canvas? Join an art center and create a paint pour coaster set? What if you go to an open mic and tip the host or participate in the open mic? Or find a local restaurant that has live music, go in, buy a drink, and tip the musician that night. What are you missing out on if you build something? A table, a shed, a whole cabin? What are you missing out on if you decide to start growing your own food instead of buying all the boxed and processed foods? Why not learn to crochet or knit or sew? Not that I can do any of these things. I kill every plant I try to grow, and I can no longer see well enough to learn how to do decent stitching. But I think I might be able to grow potatoes and tomatoes. They seem to pretty much take care of themselves. Anyway, there's so many different things we can do to not feel as though we are missing out on anything. Take on a project to feed the hungry, visit prisons, or shuttle a neighbor to the airport. Why not partner with your local library to teach a class on, I don't know, a skill that you have that's really cool? And maybe instead of pointless debate on X, why not start and facilitate an actual, in real life, face-to-face discussion group and learn how to talk to people who disagree with you? That would be unexpected too. I know there are loads of discussion groups and clubs and all of them out there already that have their own rules of engagement and they're on mission in some way or another. But like a book club or friends that get together to play bridge or, I don't know, Mexican train or to get together to do water aerobics. Do we have to be on mission with people of like mind who are trying to tackle all the problems in the world? I mean, do we have to be on mission towards some greater cause? Or can the authentic relationships, what we learn about our community and ourselves, actually be the greater cause? I mean, I don't know how many ways one person can jump outside the narrative, but I guess what I'm saying is question everything. Why are they promoting that story? Why do they want me to do that? Who benefits? Who suffers? How will that impact me? How do they want me to feel? Why would they want me to feel that way? And then chuck it all in the bin and live life with passion. And I don't mean in passions, but in freedom. Live free. Okay, so jump outside the narrative whenever possible. And then we need to find ways to redefine the narrative. Those who are destroying the fabric are very good at this. Think of all the definitions and meanings they have gotten society to just accept. And think of all the false dichotomies Americans believe are true. all these people we think are our enemies who aren't. And think of all the words they have stolen and introduced. Not just gender and pride and transition, not just recession, but wealth and poverty. Not just justice, but spirituality, and even the word liberal and cis and woke and equity and diversity and inclusion. I mean, how many more can I list? How many more can you list? Anyway, those who are destroying the fabric are very good at changing the narrative. But keep in mind that since everything tends toward entropy anyway, right, the second law of thermodynamics, destruction is much easier than restoration or building something new. So you may not think that you have that much influence because it seems so much harder, but if you start building something new now, and if you start building more relationships in more places, your influence can grow. And one of the most effective ways to redefine the narrative is to take control of that which is already in your power. So even though the redefinition may only take place within your small sphere of influence, it is a sphere of influence. And if enough people cling and propagate your narrative, it can grow. Think, pay it forward. The first recommendation I would make is to frame all discussions, especially policy-driven discussions, around liberty principles, not around political party or an individual politician. But don't just stop with political discussions. Choosing to live a principled life means framing arguments and thought exercises around those principles as well. Place all discussions, political and otherwise, within a framework built on freedom principles. At least that's what I do. And yes, I'm telling you to do what I do. I frame my choices and my behavior based upon freedom and liberty principles. I frame my arguments around freedom and liberty principles. And yes, I have had basically decades to learn how to do this, but I do not just echo back what I heard that sounded good, that someone else said and seemed to be a great argument against the prevailing narrative. No, I intentionally look at every report, every announcement, every event, every news item, every social gathering, everything I do, every argument that comes into my mind through a freedom lens. And this does take practice. But I'm sure you have seen other people look at everything through a particular lens. I mean, even social media posts might be seen through a religious lens, whether it be their faith practice or holy book. They quote that all the time, or the new kind of cult-like wokeisms. I mean, this is why you see people who can post a scripture verse in reply to every tweet. And you can see people who can be triggered by the most inane and trite comments because they're seeing it through a very religious kind of lens. They are viewing everything through their religious lens. Now, I don't believe we really want to do that because religion itself means to bind up. And I think to restore our society, we need to not bind anything up, but we need to break free from the bonds. And that's what I mean by jumping outside these new expectations. And we need to embrace the liberty we are so close to losing. But we don't want to lose our liberty, do we? So another very significant way we can and should reframe the narrative, again, within our own sphere of influence, those of us who want to hold on to our liberty, we have the opportunity to change the narrative surrounding the word conservatism. They are changing definitions. How hard would it be to change connotations? In our personal interactions, we have a chance to redefine conservatism. The current connotation adopted by centrists, liberals, and the apathetic is quite negative. What do conservatives want to conserve? Bigotry? Hate? Racism, nationalism, jingoism, xenophobia, arrogance, imperialism? Or do conservatives want to carve out a place in society for conservation of language, definitions, connotations, and context, of shared values? most especially freedom and liberty? What about conservation of constitutional republicanism instead of democracy? And the unique and beautifully woven fabric of this country. Yes, based on a checkered history where our national crimes pricked our collective conscience and sparked needed change. Do conservatives want to conserve an understanding of natural law, including natural rights, equality, and justice? Do they want to conserve the values of loving one's neighbor, a good work ethic, and doing good to those that hate you? Do they believe in conservation of wildlife and good stewardship over ecosystems, in addition to conserving the American way of life? What do conservatives want to conserve? Conservatism should be seeking to conserve liberalism, and each of us can make it so within our own personal sphere of influence. But this should also be a national conversation. Again, why I wrote the book. Please share these ideas with those in your sphere of influence. And yes, the pay it forward principle. Let's see how much difference one person can make in the pay it forward scenario. Care enough to keep lighting the brush fires of freedom in the minds of men. If we can light enough brush fires, some of them have got to persist. They cannot all be put out at once. And if some of them can persist, maybe they'll even spread if given the right fuel. I just do not see that fuel anywhere in the mainstream. So please partner with me. Let's make this a national effort. And since people who once found themselves in the center have, due to the shift of the Overton window, now these people are being accused of being conservatives. I think it is about time conservatives took back their own identifying word and changed the connotation by flooding the airwaves with the new meaning, and do this for months or years until that is the message being heard. And honestly, we have got to take back the word liberal too. Classical liberalism was something we all once agreed upon. Now, liberal has a connotation of radical progressivism. Now it has a connotation of someone who wants government control over the lives of Americans, who sees that as a net benefit. And that's astounding. A liberal should be someone who embraces liberty. I mean, it has the same root word. It's someone who should hold to an ideology, an ism, that defines their worldview through a lens of liberty. So, if we can do nothing else, I think we need to start today to change connotations, the meanings of the words conservative and liberal within American society and even in political discussions. Because guess what? People might actually start realizing that conservatives and liberals are the same people with the same values and not enemies of each other at all. Jump outside the narrative, rewrite the narrative, and together we can start weaving the fabric of this country back together. Let's start today. Are you with me?